Overthinking is without a doubt the disease of the philosopher, because ultimately it does start from something inherently positive and intellectually healing, which is thinking. But just as a gym bro or a lover of fitness can degenerate into steroid consumption, just like that, a philosopher can degenerate into overthinking. Thinking is absolutely fantastic. It literally heals your mind, it makes you more logical, rational, and wise. It's those four letters that come before it, over, that make it a disease, that make it something that you should probably avoid at all cost. But how do we actually think clearly without having to limit our thinking too much in order to not degenerate into overthinking, whilst also thinking enough in order to not become like brainless zombies that do not know how to think or act and thus do not know how to act? How do you actually find a good middle ground between overthinking and being completely brainless? Well, in my opinion, some brainless activity is completely necessary in order to actually think well. Because what happens if you don't have brainless activity and you're thinking all day? What's that little stereotypical interpretation, perception, stereotype of the philosopher? The person who only cares about their head and degenerates, literally just degenerates all day thinking about things that nobody really cares about in the end. Because if, just like a heads up, if all else fails, you should probably remember that you're going to die anyway someday. So really overthinking, trying to find the perfect solution to everything, or thinking about every single possible outcome or a thing that could happen in the future is probably going to be absolutely worthless. And a million years, nobody is going to care. Ultimately, everything is going to die, and certainly you. That's just the ultimate solution. But if you don't want to get that morbid with it, there are plenty of other things that you can do. For example, let's take an example that I do myself, even though you should probably not replicate it exactly. Every single time that I sit down at this desk to record a YouTube video, this is probably more of a bad habit than a tip, but I'll just give it to you because allegedly it helps. Allegedly, I just thought it up. I scroll on YouTube Shorts for 10 minutes because that's a brainless activity. That's really just mental rest. It's probably not as good as taking a nap, but whatever. It's a brainless activity that really preps me for the intellectual effort that takes me to that is necessary in order to actually form a coherent speech or a good argument on paper. For example, what do I have written on this paper? Well, first off, overthinking is the disease of the philosopher because ultimately, if you're a philosopher, if you're somebody who likes deep thinking, deep work, deep reading, who likes studying, learning, the social sciences basically, or any other sciences, or whatever you like, you're probably going to start overthinking if you're an actual intellectual. It's the disease of the philosopher because it starts from something that the philosopher should do, that everybody in the world needs to do, but as everything good in the world, if it's done too much, it degenerates into the over version of it, the overthinking of the thinking. Next up, overthinking is caused by something positive taken too far. Okay, some brainless activity is absolutely necessary for good, actual clear, concise, deep thinking. Because if you're thinking all day, that's overthinking. You shouldn't be thinking 18 hours a day. You should probably take some time to think. I don't know, 5 minutes every hour, maybe. But some actions need to be brainless. You can't do everything with a rational head. You kind of need to let your rationality and logic go in some very planned moments throughout the day. Of course, don't let it go whilst you're driving, but find a moment to actually let your mind rest. Whilst you're sleeping, you're not overthinking, are you? Maybe your dreams are, maybe you're still trying to overthink, but inherently, sleeping is the state where you're not thinking at all, when you're like in a flow state where your brain really just heals itself. If you want to stop overthinking, another thing that you can do very easily is just set a fixed, not a very fixed, but set a perception of reality that you are not going to question every single day. Of course, you can modify it, but at least have something. Because if I said to myself, okay, I really like philosophy and public speaking, I like speaking about philosophy. If I wasn't truly certain of that, I would probably question it every single day, and that would cause overthinking. Overthinking, because of course, thinking about your own philosophy, your own missions, your own tastes is something that you should do. But if you're really uncertain about them, you'll probably start questioning them, over questioning them, overthinking about them. So set something fixed, something that can stand, but that can also be modified. I can very easily, if I set that perception and I'm absolutely certain about it, I can say, okay, I like philosophy, I like public speaking, I like speaking publicly about philosophy on whatever, on like a stage, on YouTube, on Instagram, whatever. I also like, or do not like, speaking to a big crowd. Okay, I kind of changed my philosophy, but the idea still kind of stands. I'm not completely overthinking it so to revolutionize the entire self-perception, the entire philosophy of my life, of my tastes, of my hobbies and passions and things that I want to do in the future. I just kind of change it, but the idea still stays there. I don't need to overthink it. I don't need to overthink it too much because it's still solid. I can still touch it. I can still feel it. Yes, maybe it's changed. Maybe the texture is a bit more liquid, whatever, but it's still there. And of course, the ultimate solution for overthinking is just memento mori. Because what's the worst that can happen? Overthinking is most of the time, probably most of the time, thinking about what can happen in the future or what has already happened and something that takes you out of the present, which is basically all that you have. The reason you overthink is because you think things matter too much as well. They do not matter that much. You can very easily actually kind of play with the idea of importance in your day-to-day life. If you're overthinking about something and thinking too much about the importance of something is making you worse, it's making you overthink, it's literally poisoning you as a philosopher, then that's the time where you stop giving it that much importance, like still some level of importance that demands thinking, but not over importance, which demands overthinking, if that's clear enough. And for the things that actually overthinking about gives you energy, actually makes you motivated, then you can overthink about them. And if you're actually thinking too much about them, overthinking about the things that you really like, take a break from them and once again remind yourself that they are not that important. Nobody really cares about it. Like there are so many things that you can do or not do and nobody will ever care. Maybe they will like swear at you or look weird at you or whatever, but in like 5 minutes they will forget and go back to thinking about their own stupidity. So don't really take it seriously. That's my best tip. So, in conclusion, as a recap, overthinking is the disease of the philosopher because it starts from something positive, which is thinking. Everybody should think, but do not overthink. Work out, do not take steroids, something like that. Secondly, overthinking, of course, it's something positive taken too far. Some brainless activity is necessary for good thinking. Because if you're just thinking deeply all day, that's basically what overthinking is, in like the intellectual sense. If you do not want to like overthink too much your own situation, whatever, set up a solid reality that you cannot actually destroy with one thought that is kind of filling the tank too much. Most of the time you just overthink, and you think one more thing, and that causes a complete breakdown because that's too much information that you're just kind of contemplating. So Set something that you can pick apart, maybe change, but not completely destroy, and you can't reconstruct every single day. Completely reconstruct every single day. And if all else fails, remember that what you're overthinking is probably not that important. It probably will not have that big of an effect on the world, and not people don't really care about it, because ultimately you're the only one that cares about yourself so much. So, if you like the video, send it to someone that you loved. No, send it to someone that you love. Give me some feedback. Write a review in the comments. Give me your suggestions. And I'll see you later.